Welcome to Success Weekly with James Tharris, a weekly dose of thought-provoking ideas and helpful tips on improving your mindset. And now, here's your host, James Tharris.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of Success Weekly. I'm James Tharris, your host for today. Boy, have we got a fun one for you this great day. I don't know if you're into conspiracy theories and things, but I happen to really enjoy looking through them and investigating them. I'm intrigued by them. So we're going to get into a little bit of conspiracy theory today, conspiracy theory talk today. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to reach into your wallet, reach into your purse, and I want you to take out a dollar bill, a $1 bill. We're going to get into the conspiracy theory that I have today on the meaning of the $1 bill, particularly the back side of the $1 bill. Here right now I'm holding a crisp $1 bill in my hand with George Washington, our nation's first president. And there's lots of conspiracies about the dollar bill that you can Google up and look on YouTube and things. And they're very interesting because some of the things they talk about are really they make you think a little bit and wonder about the Illuminati and these the Freemasons and all these kind of secret society organizations and all this, and it's very fascinating to see what they have to say about it. But I'm going to give you my conspiracy theory on what the dollar bill, particularly the back of the dollar bill, represents, because my theory is a little bit different than some of the other guys out there, and I've studied all the different conspiracy theories on the dollar bill. You can fold the dollar bill into certain positions and it supposedly reveals different pictures and things like that, and there's all these different little symbolisms in here. I'm going to keep things very simple for you and maybe get you to think about the dollar bill a little bit differently, and maybe help illuminate, there's that word, maybe help to illuminate your thinking a little bit on what the possible meaning of the dollar bill could be. So first of all, we have to think about the dollar bill as what it was designed to be, which is currency. Currency was, there's another conspiracy about the word currency and how it relates to flowing and water and things like this and maritime laws and all these things, and that's something you can investigate on your own. But I'm going to talk about it as currency for exchanging of money for paying off debts and things. So if you look at the front of it, it says right underneath the Federal Reserve note, the United States of America, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So we're going to look at the back of the dollar bill here with that in mind. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that the back of the dollar bill, there are two primary colors. One of them is an off-white and the other is a green color. So why did they choose the color green instead of brown or blue or red or some other color, or just black and white? Because obviously black and white printing is some of the easiest to read. So why did they choose green? Well, my theory is that they chose green because green represents growth. And when we first established the United States way back in 1776, the thought was that this was just the beginning and planting of a seed of freedom, and we were going to grow from there, and it was going to be perpetual growth, and we're green and evergreen, growing. And that's my theory on why the dollar bill is green. Now the next one, we're going to look at the two symbols. There's one on the left and one on the right. We're going to look at the one on the right first, and you're going to notice that there are several little things to look at here. And the first and foremost thing that you can see in the little circle on the right is an eagle. So why did they select the eagle for the back of the dollar bill? Well, it's my opinion that as Americans, we want to fly. Have you ever had a dream where you could fly? And of course you have. And aren't those dreams the ones that are most exciting and interesting, the ones where we believe we can fly? There's songs written about it, and we have superheroes, and one of the coolest superpowers is the power of flight. So we dream about that, and from as far back as we can remember, we've had guys trying to become birds by putting feathers on sticks and trying to flap like birds and jump off of roofs and cliffs and things like that. And eventually the Wright brothers made the bird, which is known as the airplane, and of course it's really taken off, pun intended there, to where from where it started to what we have today with these jets and these the B-1 bomber and all these different types of things, the stealth bomber and all these types of things. It's incredible what they've done with it, but it started with the thought of the bird, and that's something that most people want to be able to do, is to fly. So that's the reason that I think the bird was chosen instead of another animal of power. Eagles are considered the most powerful birds, and they're birds of prey, which means that they're at the top of the food chain. Their eyesight is excellent, and they say that the eagle's eyesight is 4 to 5 times better than humans, so it's having the ability to see the small details and to see things that might be as opposed to things that are. And eagles build their nests in cliffs or on tall trees rather than near to the ground. So in other words, they have high, lofty goals and dreams. They're basically the ultimate symbol of freedom, because the ultimate symbol of freedom is flight. When we're kids and we get our first taste of freedom is when we get our bicycle or our little Barbie Jeeps or those little motorized vehicles. That's our first taste of freedom. And then, of course, when we start riding bicycles or mopeds and mini bikes and things like that. And then, of course, the next thing is the car. When you get your car at the age of 16 or 17, that's considered like the ultimate freedom right there. And then, of course, when we get into an airplane, we can cut down the travel time. So traveling coast to coast can be done in 4 to 6 hours versus a couple of days by car or months by foot. So having flight is the ultimate sense of freedom, and I believe it's kind of like taking flight and the sense of freedom that we get as Americans. You'll notice that the eagle is holding 2 different things. In his left hand, if you're looking directly at the eagle, you'll see an olive branch, and that olive branch represents peace. So that when we say we're offering an olive branch, or we extend an olive branch to somebody, it's an offering of peace, and so that means that we're a peaceful nation. And then, of course, on the other side, you see that the eagle is holding a group of arrows, which means basically the opposite, is don't mess with us. We're a peaceful nation, but don't mess with us, because we will defend ourselves. So in martial arts terms, that's basically the display of the yin and the yang. The olive branch being the yin, and the yang being the arrows. So having the ability to fight, but not wishing to fight. Okay. Next is you see a shield that's covering the eagle's chest, which is essentially our American flag, and again, it represents freedom. You'll see, if you notice, the flag is it's green here, but in color it would be, I guess, red and white. So on this, since we've got the dark colors and the white colors, or lighter colors, we're going to just look at it as white lines and dark lines. You'll notice that there are 7 white lines, which again is kind of representing the yin. If you look at the Chinese yin and yang, the yin side is the little white fish. Half of circles turn, half of it is white on the left and half of it is black on the right, or vice versa. The white represents yin, or the peaceful nature of our nation. And then, of course, there are 7 of those lines. And then there are only 6 of the dark lines, which represent the yang, which again is kind of symbolic of needing the ability to defend ourselves. And so that's the kind of the darkness of our human nature. And there's 1 less of those, which means, in my opinion, that we have 1 more peaceful line than we do 1 more dark line, and that is an indication of our intentions of peace. And then over the head of the eagle, you see a star cluster with the words "E pluribus unum" or "unum" underneath the stars, which means in English, out of many, one. Out of many, one. That basically means united we stand, divided we fall. So the concept there is we're more successful as a team, as a nation. Together, everyone achieves more than we are separate. And that's important. That's why we want to try to be part of a team versus separate players on that team. Imagine a basketball team or a football team with everybody on that team having their own individual goals and not collectively worried about the team's goals. That would be chaos. And there are teams that suffer from that, and there are players that kind of try to hog the ball, and they don't typically gain a lot of favor from the coaches or from the other players. And so I think that's what those stars up there, in my opinion, what they mean. Out of many, one. Next, on the other side, this is the more interesting side. On the left side, you'll notice the circle with a big pyramid and the eyeball and that's illuminated. Again, the Illuminati, right? I don't think so. I think it's something else. So the pyramids, at the very top of it, you see the words Annuit Septis, which means favor our undertakings. So I believe that's a biblical reference, and it's asking God to favor our undertakings because we were a nation, one nation under God, indivisible, right? So it's asking him to favor our undertakings. Now, why the pyramid? Why not just a ball or a circle or a straight line structure, something like that? Why the pyramid? Well, the pyramid is known as the world's strongest structure. If you look at the Egyptian pyramids and other pyramids throughout the United States and throughout the world, they're still standing. Even after 5,000 years, you still see them standing. And there are very few structures that are still standing from that long ago or any other time. So that indicates the strength of a pyramid. So my theory on that is that's the idea of the American dream. And that is to get into a pyramid, which is basically an organization of any kind, and work your way toward the top. They also know that's known as the corporate ladder in corporate speak. But really, every successful organization has that. So if you look at the many families, and now it's a little different in today's day and age, but back in my parents' day and age, my mother was one of 11 kids. You don't see that as often anymore, but that was back then. That was more common than it is now. And so you'd have one mother, one father. The father was usually the head of the household, and the mother was not very far behind that. And in many cases, she may have been considered the head of the household. And then they were pushed up that pyramid ladder or pyramid structure by all of the kids underneath, helping to elevate them. And so eventually they break off the pyramid themselves when they become the parent, and they start their own families. So I think if you look at any organization in the United States, that's what you're going to see, is it's a pyramid structure. You look at a school, let's say an elementary school. How many principals are there in the school? And what does principal, we spell it Principal. What does that mean? A principal is kind of like the most important, the leading, right? And so how many principals are there in a school? Typically one. And then followed by one vice principal, and then you've got guidance counselors, and then a lot of what? Teachers. Now there are a lot of teachers in comparison to a principal, but how many students are there in comparison to the teachers? As the students learn and grow and move up the ladder, which is first grade, second grade, third grade, and so on and so forth, up to 12th grade, what do they do, a lot of them? A lot of them ascend up the pyramid, break away, and become the teacher. The student has become the teacher, as we've heard so often. So it's the same thing in the American dream, I believe. And so you can do it through a corporate structure, moving it through a business, or you could break away and start your own business, as in my case and in many other cases of Americans here in our country. So I think that's very, very important. And why is the top of the pyramid, why is it broken? Well, again, that's like I said, you're breaking away from the structure, from the pyramid structure that you ascended. And at that point, why is the eye in the middle? Because at that point, that's when you gain new insights. You're able to see things that you weren't able to see before. And you get to see things that others don't get to see. I mean, if you've ever climbed to the top of a hill, when you're looking at your surroundings from the bottom of the hill, you can see so many things, right? And some of the things you can see better because you're up close and personal. But as you climb up that hill and you get to the top of the hill, you get what's known as a bird's eye view. See that bird's eye again? Again, going back to the eagle, it's a bird's eye view. When you're at that level and you're flying, you can see things a lot clearer and a lot further than if you're on the ground. And so that's what I believe the meaning of that pyramid, the little broken structure, or if you look at it in a different mindset, it's like a mini pyramid, right? It's kind of like you're starting a new pyramid. You're starting a new organization and moving up to another level of ascension, and you get to see more and more. So again, if you climb up to the top of a hill, you get a bird's eye view of what your town and area looks like. Well, what happens if you climb to the top of a mountain? You get to see even more. What happens if you look out the window of a helicopter? You get to see even more. What happens when you look out the window of an airplane? You get to see even more. Now, what happens when you look out the window of a spaceship after it leaves the atmosphere? You can see the entire Earth, and you only get to see that the higher you go, right? And so that's what I believe that this pyramid structure means, not this Illuminati thing where the all-seeing eye is watching you and things like that. I believe that it's more of what I just talked about. And underneath there, you're going to see that the words Novus Ordo Seclorum. And that basically means new order of the ages. So when, as a child, when you were growing up in your parents' household, you probably thought to yourself, this is unfair. I don't like what mom or dad's doing here. It's not, I wouldn't, if I had my own kids, I wouldn't do things quite the same way. So when you break away from your parents and you move out and you start your own family, well, then it's a new order of the ages for your family. And you get to keep the good things that you really learned, and then you can learn from their mistakes and you can change and create your own order for your own family. So not every family is raised the same way, and so when you become the parent, when you get up to that pyramid and you break away, you get to make the rules a little bit, and you can experiment, and so you usually learn things. I mean, think about it. Do you think you knew more as a 10-year-old, or do you think you knew more as a 20-year-old? Obviously, as a 20-year-old, you're going to know a heck of a lot more than a 10-year-old, and as a 40-year-old, you're going to know a heck of a lot more than most 20-year-olds. So that's the idea. That's the further up the pyramid you get, the more you see, the more you learn. And that's my opinion on what it means. So, when you get into a pyramid, people look at that as a kind of a negative thing, pyramid scheme and things like that. And so anything that's positive can be used in a negative way, just like money itself can. So if you look at this crisp dollar bill, or you look at your crisp dollar bill, that is it's merely a tool that can be used for both good or for evil. You can do bad things with money, and you can do great things with money. And so it's the same thing with a pyramid. Certain organizations, I'm sure they exist, and they exist for bad purposes, but certain organizations exist for good purposes. So obviously part of the American dream is doing it with integrity, getting into the right kind of an organization and ascending, helping those people, push them up, and then reaching down and pulling somebody up with you, and as you ascend the pyramid. And so I hope you enjoyed today's conspiracy-filled episode of Success Weekly, because really that's part of success, is understanding. And if I've helped you to understand things from a different perspective, or just got you thinking a little bit differently about some of the things that we discussed today, or if you totally disagree and you think that there's a whole different purpose behind the design of our dollar bill, I would love to hear your comments on this. As I say, I really enjoy checking out different conspiracies. It's very entertaining, and it's also very educational as well. And you'll find so many different ideas out there. And this is just mine. And I came to these thoughts through my own experiences in life and in martial arts, and through my successes. And so I believe that I've ascended up a couple of pyramids in my life and gained a little bit of knowledge. And to me, that's what it means. So again, if you've enjoyed this, please like it and share it. And I'd love to hear your comments on it. And if there's something else, maybe there's another conspiracy lurking out there you'd like for me to disseminate and give you my thoughts on, I'd love to know what that is, and I'll be happy to see what I can do to accommodate you. So until next week, this is James Theris saying, be successful and do the best that you can to achieve your own personal success.
That's all for this week. Tune in next week for another episode of Success Weekly. Do you have an idea you'd like James to talk about in an upcoming episode? Post your comments and be sure to share this podcast with friends.